Okay, here we go. Welcome to Growth Garage, everybody. We're just going to give about another minute because we've got a few people still filtering in as we go. So as people are starting to filter in, happy Friday and welcome. I think this is our fifth. I think this is our fifth Growth Garage, and I'm really excited for this one. It's a subject that's really close to my heart, and I think we've got a really great group. So as you guys are coming in, thank you for joining us. We'll just give it one more minute here. And then we can get started. Okay. Well, I think we can kick things off. Welcome, everybody, to Growth Garage Lunch and Learn, presented by Kahn Media. This is our quarterly webinar series where we tackle different subjects related to marketing. This, I think, is going to be a really good one. We're really excited. The subject or the theme is the attention shift, how video is driving modern marketing. And we're really fortunate to have both a great MC and some great panelists with us today. So I really appreciate you joining us. Just some quick rules, or not rules, but some kind of a briefing. We're going to have Michael Serrano MC this one. He is the head of production at Kahn Media, and he's been with us for several years. So, Michael, thanks for doing this. And if you've seen any of the videos we've produced, including some of the documentaries we've done in the last couple of years, Michael was at the helm of those. And then we also, and we're going to go into some deeper introductions, but we have both Jordan Perry from Hoonigan and David Kennedy from NHRA. So really grateful to have you guys join us today and share your insight and your knowledge with our audience. So thank you. And we're going to kind of go through some different Q&As with the group. And then at the end, we will be opening it up for questions. So just quick housekeeping thing. If you have questions, you can ask those in a couple different ways. Certainly, if you have a question you really want to ask right away and you don't want to wait, just jump into the chat. You can post it there, and either Michael or someone from my team will read that question out to the panelists, and we'll get that out during the Q&A session. Or if you want to wait, you can obviously wait till the end when we open it up to questions, and we can tackle it that way. Just some quick background before we get started. This presentation is powered by both Kahn Media and Tread Agency. Kahn Media, we founded about 17 and a half years ago, is an integrated marketing firm focused on transportation and lifestyle brands. We are very fortunate that we get to work with some really cool companies ranging from OEMs to some of the top automotive aftermarket performance brands, SEMA, a lot of top events around the country. We're really excited to talk to this group today. It's near and dear to my heart. And also Tread Agency, which we acquired a few years ago. It is a experiential marketing agency based in Bozeman, Montana, that is focused on the outdoor recreation market. So fish, hunt, hike. For those that are interested in from that market, we have a really cool program coming up in just a couple of months called our Attraction Series. We've done these every year where we bring media, influencers, and brands and subject matter experts together. And the next one we're going to be doing is going to be in Taos, New Mexico with a fly fishing focus. And it should be really cool. And even talk about diversity in the outdoor rec market and things like that. So it should be really cool. You also should have gotten a poll pop-up during this presentation. We'd love for you to answer it. We're just trying to gather a little bit of more info on our audience and just asking basically, why are you here? Are you here for professional development or just because you're interested? So I would love for you to answer that if you have a second. Thank you. Okay, so to kind of kick things off, I am going to introduce Michael, and then he's going to take it from there. So Michael Serrano has been with us as the head of production for several years. Michael's from LA, and he has worked with us on dozens and dozens of clients and probably hundreds of projects over the last couple of years. And he is just quietly marching along with his kind of quiet confidence and stacking up win after win with some really cool content. As I mentioned earlier, even doing some documentary work and traveling internationally and all over the country for us. And Michael, you've built a great team, and we're grateful to have you. So take it away.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so like Dan said, I've been with the company for several years. Started around 2018, really getting into the video production stuff professionally. Kind of ditched my old job and went in head first, and kind of worked with some smaller production companies. Ended up working with Kahn as a freelancer around 2020, and then just kind of built the relationship from there. And 2024, I think, or sorry, 2022, went on full time. So it's been a great couple of years with the team. We have a ton of different clients that are super interesting to me and like right up my alley. So it was a really great fit. so yeah, it's been great and haven't looked back since. So I do want to introduce the guest here again. So David Kennedy is a director of multimedia content and contingency at the NHRA. So David, if you want to give us a quick overview on
Sure.
who you are, what you do.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Dan and Jordan, for having us here. I met Dan Kahn probably circa 2003 timeframe at probably Rod and Custom Magazine. So I've known Dan for a long time. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys in here. I'm a magazine guy by background and came into up through the Peterson Prime Media sourcing link ranks and then came to NHRA about 10 years ago. First thing when I came to NHRA, worked for the head of television production, and he asked me how much I knew about video. And we began a journey over the last 10 years because coming from the previous world that was heavily print based to now drag racing is heavily video based, it was a good steep learning curve for me over the last 10 years. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But by definition, I'm a storyteller, a powertrain person, and we're drag racing this weekend in Phoenix, Arizona. So we'll talk a little bit about that today too.
Awesome. Thanks, David, and thank you for being here with us today. Moving forward, so our other panelist is Jordan Perry, marketing director for Hoonigan Industries. So, Jordan, you want to give us a little quick overview on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for inviting me on. Been super excited to join in on this and get a chance to talk with you guys and hear from David as well about his experience. Going back a little ways, I have a pretty organic background. I grew up with a family who participated in motorsports, so it's been a real natural path for me. Started creating my own automotive related content about 11 years ago. Ended up with Hoonigan about 6 years ago. And at this point, I'm the marketing director, like you said, at Hoonigan. I'm leading brand strategy, content development, marketing strategy across our platforms, everything from social media to e-commerce partnerships, some email marketing, not all video, spans the gamut.
Awesome, awesome. Well, again, thank you both for joining us. I'm really excited to get some questions going and kind of see what your guys' worlds look like. I know you guys come from two different backgrounds here,
Yeah.
so it'd be really interesting to see how you guys tackle certain situations. So, just going to cover real quick what we're going to go over today. So, here are a couple of things we're going to cover, and we're going to end it off with about 15 to 10 minutes of Q&A from our viewers. So, we're going to be talking about why video dominates modern marketing today, planning video with clear goals and strategy, where video drives value across the customer journey, and measuring video performance and real marketing impact. So those are just some of the things we're going to try and cover today. If there's anything else that's not on this list that you as a viewer have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll try and get to your guys' questions at the end or maybe even during if we have time. So feel free to drop those in. But yeah, we could dive right in. Awesome. So we could kick it off with the first question here. So a lot of brands want to do more video. What are some good starting points for companies or brands to kind of get into video with the current landscape of video? And anyone can take it away here if you guys want to take turns chatting there.
Jordan,
Okay,
maybe I can jump in first because in some
go
cases
for it.
I might say you go two different directions. If you've inherited an old brand with a lot of expectations, it kind of will shape a lot of how you'll begin and probably how you should proceed. NHRA is 75 years old, and it started basically in print photo. So a lot of our looks, the visuals, the vocabulary of our brand were defined before any of us were born. And
Yeah.
and in order to kind of leverage that storytelling, we're I don't want to say locked in, but we can leverage a lot of existing story. So the first thing I would look at is look at your history, look at your identity, and then look at the identity of the audience, and you're going to craft content, probably short form to begin with, just so you can introduce yourself to a space and have it at a scale that you can manage. You know, if you were to start with a docu series 10-part, 10-hour thing. It's too much. So start easy. Recognize yourself, recognize the audience, and choose the easiest path to connect those two.
Yeah, yeah. I really like this question. And I think that that's a perfect response as well. Um, I think it really comes back to one, like you said, knowing your audience, how to be authentic to, whatever you're passionate about and your audience that you've curated. But then also, one thing I've noticed a lot of brands struggling with is being able to figure out what each piece of content is about and not being just beholden to their business goals, but letting each piece of content really serve its own purpose within their content strategy. So, to dive a little bit deeper, I think it's, you got to know your brand, you got to know your brand voice, you got to know your audience, you got to have consistency, but you also have to be able to let each piece of content have its own goal.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. Okay, so another question for you too here is so you have brands like Hoonigan, obviously, who's geared more towards like the social side, and then you have the NHRA who's more has more of a traditional broadcasting background. How should those two type of brands approach video differently? Because I'm sure there's a ton of differences between how you guys produce content, what platforms you push content through. So how does what differs from those two?
Yeah,
I don't know
that's a
I'll
great.
let you go first, Jordan.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, I think that's a great question. It's interesting to compare, NHRA and Hoonigan. They are very different. I'm sure our approaches are different with the same goal, essentially. We're both choosing our lane or have inherited a lane, like you mentioned, David, which is really interesting. But I think that also puts every brand in the same boat per se, because it's important to acknowledge. To me, it's really important to acknowledge, luck and timing. Hoonigan started at a different era than NHRA, and social media was popping off at that point in time when Hoonigan started really early on Instagram. And those same opportunities exist for brands that are listening to this today, just on different places. Um, so while Hoonigan is very much a social first, creator led um, brand and content platform that's just built for speed, creator personalities, um, and just pumping out content that our audience likes is our main goal. That opportunity exists elsewhere too, on new platforms, TikTok, Instagram. It's not that videos change, you just got to identify where to do it.
And I think I would follow up with that, for us, what's the behavior you want your audience to create? We have audience. It's something that we serve, but the behavior that we want that audience to take on isn't just to be a static audience. We want them to do things. And
Yeah.
for NHRA, the two behaviors that we want that benefit us the most, the first one that has the immediate economic incentive is to come to a race. That's the primary motivator. So every storytelling opportunity is really a push to have you come to race, buy a ticket. But there's an even more valuable one that we participate with, not as obvious, but we really want to make more people like us. And when I say like us, I mean more racers, more industry, more storytellers, more people that see this as a marketplace for them to be fostered. I come from a magazine background, and the H and the R from NHRA is Hot Rod Magazine because our founder came from that. And as I've gotten into this more, I realized the association is the part that was the most important to them. They wanted to see this as an opportunity. So, our opportunity now is, can we make more racers? Because once you come in as a racer, you buy in, you compete, you participate. Um, then two things happen. You're a long-term collaborator with our sport, with our industry, and then we begin to tell your story, and it becomes a resonating experience that you grow and is more success. So for us, all of the content comes down to we don't just want your time and attention. We do want you to have two behaviors, and those behaviors should feel self-serving as audience, something you're enjoying and something you like to
Yeah.
participate with. And we're using video and other storytelling platforms to encourage you to do those things. So I would suggest to people watching this that you have, your knowledge of your audience, knowledge of your story, and then what behavior really benefits both of you, not just today, but long term, 10 years, a decade, a lifetime, generationally. And if you can incorporate that in, we've inherited it. So it's easy for me to talk about it long term. If I had to create it today, if I'm brand new, I think that's harder, but something still you could say, all right, next year, what do I want my customer to do? Not when I get a billion followers or trillion followers, but even with 10 followers, whatever I want them to do, let me be mindful of that behavior now and encourage it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I
Okay.
like that. And I think what's really interesting and you hear a lot of today is authenticity. And that's what I feel like we both align on is that if you're not authentic first in your content, your audience knows it and they're never going to take action or trust you to, come buy your t-shirt or come buy your tickets. And I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Love that. Okay. Okay, so moving on here. How do we know when video strategy is working, and how quickly should a brand be willing to change their strategy once they kind of realize that? Is there kind of a point where you give it time to breathe and let your strategy kind of have its fair chance to make an impact, or what does that look like for you guys?
I could
You
start
want to
with
go,
that
Dave?
one. Yeah, I think for us, the pivot is always if you've made something that's like Jordan saying inauthentic. Um, you're in danger. You want to experiment, and if you have a new audience or if you have a new brand, a new message, and you're good at one area, and most of the time you come into a space with your strengths and perform those strengths. And if it resonates with the audience, it's easy. You get to keep doing that. I would encourage you to stick with your strength until the audience doesn't connect with it and proves you wrong before you start to become an imposter and try to do something that you don't believe in. I would encourage you to stick with it because you're best at that. You can nuance it, you can guide it. For us, we tell the stories of racers, and because there are 40,000 of them, we can pick different people. If there's one storyline that isn't working, subject, race, class, speed. There's a lot of variables within our authentic story. As long as we're telling the stories of racers, telling real stories, we're not inserting drama. We're okay. If we did a 180 and say, we need more controversy, we need more top end fist fights. Let's do that. Those are always dangerous when you start to um, go against your own strengths. And again, maybe you need to understand a different audience. Maybe you need a different platform. Maybe this is something we could talk about as well. The platform you choose is typically a personal choice of where you want to be, but you may or may not have the audience that you want to reach there. And I think that before you change strategy, I would change environments and maybe look at a different platform with your strengths and see if it works there uh, before you scrap your authenticity, change platforms.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle for sure. I think to answer your question, Michael, I've the simplest way that I can think to boil it down is, if it's working, if people want to spend time with you, you know, with you as in your content. If they're showing their friends, if they're coming back, those are all good signals. And you can see that through metrics now, which is amazing on most channels. You gotta you can really nerd out on the data and you can see watch time, you can see return viewers, comments that show intent. You can see trickle down effect into your websites. There's a lot of indicators like that, but I do think being able to, it's almost pre baked in with authenticity. You need to build a foundation first that's an authentic voice, an authentic angle for your brand, that you know you can stand behind for a little bit, like David's talking about, and you can run enough content testing to know if it's working eh, before you switch, because you'll never know what you're giving up on. And that's something we've had to do a lot over the past few years at Hoonigan as we've gone through a lot of transitions. We've reinvented our media strategy numerous times. And that's always been our goal, is to just remain true to, having fun with cars and aligning with the people who are part of that, counterculture that is Hoonigan.
Awesome. I think it's interesting, and I'd like to see what your point of view is on this, but I know that different platforms usually have, I guess, different audiences. Some brands like to run their same content through all platforms and see how it performs. And I know that sometimes like something like a TikTok won't perform as well as an Instagram piece of content, and vice versa, depending on what the content is. What's your strategy when it comes to that? Do you guys try to hit all platforms with similar content, or do you have like I guess specific content for platforms that you're only willing to use on certain platforms?
Yeah, this is a topic I actually have a strong opinion on, and I think it's something where a lot of brands miss. Uh, I still see a lot of brands who aren't considering where they're publishing the content at the ideation and creation phases, and they end up publishing it on whatever platform it is, and they're not even optimized for the format of that platform. You're seeing a wide video show up on Instagram or a tall video on YouTube, and they're missing these very basic these basics that even if they had a good production or a good concept, the video can't really succeed on the platforms they're posting it on because they're not formatting it correctly. So I think, to me, that's one thing that's pretty non-negotiable for me in content that we're creating, is it has to be formatted first and foremost for the platform. And we program separately for different channels. And I think that's the way you're always going to get the best results. Part of it's an audience, part of it's just simple formatting and audience habits on those platforms. And I think that leaves a big opportunity for people who aren't doing it. If you just get those couple things right and improve in those areas, you'll see a huge uptick in engagement, um, and you'll know what's working and what's not.
And for NHRA, one of the things that starts the first video platform they were on was television. And back to the day where they would have a reel that would get shipped around the country to play locally at local television stations. And the tin will literally have a list of all the cities it's been to. But early on, if we were born out of both still photography first and then television production second, everything is 16 by 9 in our television world, 4 by 3 before, and now it's interesting to see the formats that early television format, which was terrible on modern television format, it now has become acceptable again on social media platforms. And even just the idea of, how you're filming is something that matters. So
Yeah.
we will create simultaneously for television and in-venue live stream. In some cases, we'll use the same technologies, the same platforms, the same feed. They'll just go to two different places, and even the timeliness of it. One will be raw. You could see it essentially live, slight few second delay. One will be the same footage, highly produced, shown later that day or shown the next day, simultaneously with a social media team that will capture content, photography team that'll capture content, and these things will be deployed. One of the things that helps us a lot, knowing that we're going to be on, nearly a dozen platforms in one way or another over a weekend, is that all that content can reside in one location so that it can be extracted in a meaningful way. And I think that's something at a big scale. Again, we've inherited a lot of this. So we started with large production, and then we found ways to sample it off down to clips. Now we're finding the quickest way to get short clips for social media is typically to have an independent video production, whether again it's on iPhone, that's in parallel to the TV show. And sometimes those two things, sometimes iPhone can end up on TV. Definitely television footage ends up on social media. Um, but it is platform specific. And again, audience
Yeah.
specific. The example I typically use, you won't watch a television show to watch 15 seconds of a slow motion burnout of a top fuel slick. It, I mean, it happens on TV. We just don't dwell on it. It doesn't work. Social media, that might be all we show, and it will get more views than a television segment will,
Yep.
because audience will watch it multiple times. All the audience will share it. Audience will come back and refer to it. And because it's an event, it becomes a timeless thing that can be shared next week, next year, next month. And I think those are also things to keep in mind. So you have different platforms and then different content and then the timeliness of those things. So it's a lot of scenarios as it gets very large. Again, our strategy is led by television, knowing that we have probably equally large audience or larger in some cases on social media. And then our partners may value being on television more than being on TikTok. Um, 10 years from now, they'll probably value a platform that doesn't exist today more than anything. And so we'll be mindful. And maybe the point that I realize everything we're trying to do is trying to bring the audience as close to the action as possible. And because I can't walk you down to the starting line of a drag strip individually for everyone, we're trying to get you there through our platforms, through our experience, and keep you there as long as possible. So I would keep those things in mind. And for a lot of people watching, listening, you start with one platform and the one that you feel most optimized for, that you enjoy the most, that you think your audience is on the most, and then build from there. Maybe choose two. If you try to immediately jump into 13, um, it's going to be daunting. And I think the only strategy then is to take the same content and put it every place and watch it sort of fail in the places that it's not optimized for, and then tweak those strategies on those new platforms or larger platforms as they come along.
Awesome. Well, while we're on the topic of strategy, what is something that brands usually think should work, but ends up falling flat? Like any current trends or anything that you guys see in the industry that like brands are doing. I guess maybe like something that is just kind of dated now, but for some reason people keep doing it and it's not producing the results they expect. Is there anything that comes to mind when you think of that?
Well, well, I might start, Jordan, here that I think the idea of trying to go viral is probably the most outdated idea, that you're trying to produce something to create a result that you don't even know what that is, right? You're trying to produce something that you hope is essentially a disease that infects the world. And again, when your strategy is you hope that people will pass this around and share it. First and foremost, I think that you're already lost. Again, you want audience to see what you make. You don't want it to be an expensive piece of footage for 10 people. But I think that that's the first. Um, Within this area too, the idea of probably probably almost anything can work now, depending on the brand, but it's within your own space. Is seeing it first, is probably the most valuable thing. Seeing it, showing somebody something the second, third, fifth time, it really has to get much better if you're going to be the fifth person to show it to somebody. It's got to be a lot smarter. So if you have a strategy, I would choose be first. I would also choose a strategy of trying to make something for everyone. I think it's okay to be offensive or cause a reaction that some people uh, may or may not like it, may or may not get it, but you want a reaction. You want something to push back so that it was felt. For us, I think that strategies that we have had in the past that we've abandoned, even moving people from platform to platform and trying to create a directional opportunity. We spent a lot of time doing that in the past, where we tried to get people to go to a certain place that they weren't natively at. That's probably a mistake. I would say if you invite somebody to a party, give them the best party experience where they're at, as opposed to tell them, not really this party, you need to go over to this one here. That's probably a mistake that because we had so many platforms, we would try to direct them to the platform of our choice, where now we want to keep you wherever we find you.
Yeah, I think that's a super important point. We've found we've gone through the same experience as well there. We, for a lot of years used social media to kind of market other platforms, and that's something we moved away from entirely. In fact, for example, like on a Gymkhana project, it's primarily rooted in a film that lives on YouTube. That is the big hit. It's the product. Over the past few years, though, we've really learned how to meet the audience where they're at and format content from that Gymkhana universe specifically for an audience viewing on social media or, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok primarily. Um, and a lot of those pieces of content aren't as highly produced or highly polished. Some of them are lifts, but we we remain focused on creating an authentic experience for that viewer and the craft of that, whether it's the composition on a wide film on YouTube or the composition on a vertical film or a vertical piece of content, excuse me, on Instagram. They can both be good. They can both provide a great experience, but trying to translate that across a platform is what a brand really needs to figure out. And these platforms are built for creators more than they are for brands, and that's what the audiences want to see. So I think when a brand can find how to show up the way that these platforms are designed to work, then there's a real opportunity for them to win. But as soon as it becomes over polished and advertising, it doesn't work.
Got it. Okay, well that's interesting because I guess regarding the Gymkhana video,
Yeah,
it was like a highly produced video, really awesome YouTube piece. With something like that, I mean, obviously you're gonna tailor it more towards, long form on YouTube, pulling from that and putting it on different platforms. What, like, how do you showcase something like a big piece like that and still get the satisfaction that you're gonna get the viewership on those particular platforms? Because I've seen videos fall flat, even though they're, on one platform they're doing really good. Then you try and use them
yeah,
on different social media platforms, and the numbers just don't come. So, what's your
yeah,
approach on that?
yeah. That's a great thing you've noticed for sure. So let's like stepping outside of YouTube into what that can look like on social media. We go back again to like what does the audience want to see that they don't get out of the film? And that can be behind the scenes, it can be educational, it can be outtakes for certain single moments. But a really strategic way that, anyone here can start to do this is just look for single moments. You're not explaining how to build a whole engine or showing an entire gymkhana all in one piece. But if you can focus into digestible segments, whether it's one gymkhana trick or how fast did you have to go to pond skim across 100 feet of water, or just segmenting it like that, you're off to a good start for most other platforms outside of YouTube. And some of that can be lifts, like you're saying, Michael. It can be polished shots that are then shown on Instagram, but it still has to be formatted right. Like the composition's got to be good. You can't sacrifice um, the user or the viewer experience and just throw it on the platform.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, next question here I have for you two is, before brand starts shooting, what are some of the basic things that need to be clear before any shooting takes place? And like, what's the game plan to make sure that you're going to succeed with whatever it is that you're shooting?
I know I can jump in with this one, and I'll say that coming from a print background has actually been helpful because the story, um, the better you can define what the finished product would look like, the more you can see it before you even begin. It's going to save time in shooting. It's going to save time in editing, and it's going to help you know what your point, what your message, what you're expressing right before you even start. And I know for us, being able to share with the audience that they know it's us from the very first frame and knowing how do you begin. In the magazine world, I used to think that the best magazine cover I could make was the mirror, where the audience could see themselves in it instantly, but see themselves in a way that they looked better than they actually look. And then they would want to be pulled into that mirror, that familiarity. In video production content, you're able to control all of the emotional experiences, what it looks like, what it sounds like, how it moves, the color, the lack of color. You really register on an emotional level. And the idea of knowing that if this must register on an emotional level, what's that story look like? How long is that story? And so if you can script it, if you can script it out down to the shot, this is the movement, this is the camera angle, this is the lighting, the more you can know it, and you can know a lot of it. Even if you get to the point where you'd say, and then a miracle happens, and I don't know what this part is here, at least that's just one little connector that you could add in. And if you accidentally end up with something better than your script created, again, you can always accept that, but you're early on, you want to create, I think, a storyline so that you know where you're coming and where you're coming out. Again, early development, some people think if I just shoot some stuff from my phone, I can then produce something, and you certainly can do that. And if you're an owner operator, one camera, one editor, no storyline, filming your get ready with me videos, that can work. But I think all of them will evolve back to a storyline, storyboard at some point. So if you adopt that strategy earlier, I think it's advantageous across the board.
Totally. And I would just echo what David said. And something that we talked about earlier is you got to be clear on the goal for that specific piece. Don't get so tied to, what don't forget your brand, but also break it down on a smaller level. Just focus on what the goal is for the piece. Is it just entertaining your audience and keeping your channel relevant? Is it collaborating with a partner and launching a product? Is it, selling a new e-commerce product or driving ticket sales, getting people to come to your live show? Um, just really get clear on what that goal is and picture how your audience is going to see it, how they're going to feel when they watch it. Are they going to feel like they're there? Are they going to want to hang out with you and your brand and your people who are going to be there on the ground? Um, and just really viewing it from your audience's perspective. If you can start to understand how to do that, um, it'll help any brand.
Okay, cool. Another thing we wanted to talk about was just what brands do, or just with content in general. Everybody talks about the first few seconds are like the most important, so the hook. So what do you guys think about having a strong hook? Is there other ways to approach that in order to keep people's attention? Just keep people watching your content versus just really focusing on, maybe that impact right at the beginning of the video content. Is there a different approach for you guys, or do you guys kind of go about it the same way?
I'm guessing we probably go about it some way similar. I think the automotive audience responds to certain visual cues, engine sounds, wheel motion, vehicle dynamics, something that, they say humans recognize the delta. So whatever their expectations are, if it's this, if you can go here, they'll notice that. They'll notice the movement. They'll notice a dynamic. And I think within our world, it's always going to begin dynamic unless there's something that, again, using a speed, a motorsport, something that's very fast, and we're used to seeing it 300 miles an hour. if we can slow it down into ultra slow motion, that can also be a hook. But I think for us, it's start with an emotion that they're going to notice, they're going to feel, and then ramp up, not ramp down. So it's start with an energy, recognition, familiarity, almost like a John Williams musical score, something that even though they've never heard it before, it feels familiar. It feels like they've already known it, and then take them up with it. And the pace that you go with them at probably is platform specific. A YouTube experience is probably going to give you a little more time than an Instagram or TikTok scroll. But I think that idea of start with an emotional reaction and ramp up, not ramp down.
Yeah, yeah, we do a lot of the same stuff. I mean, there's the topic of hook is a science at this point, and it's so interesting how it's constantly changing and what people are learning and understanding and figuring out. Um, so there's immediate payoffs, there's curiosity, there's a lot of low-hanging levers that you can use. Starting with action, showing an outcome first, creating tension, instantly. All of this is strategy that people use, and we don't use it all the time. Sometimes we do when it's fun and authentic. Um, that first 2, 3 seconds is where those hooks really deliver and convert for most people. And if you're a brand who doesn't want to use hooks, you just got to make sure that, like David said, you're resonating instantly with something authentic, even if it's not, real hooky, or else it just becomes really long in the tooth most of the time, and the social media algorithms just won't serve it, and you'll get little to no traction. Um, I think the biggest takeaway is just shoot your content in a way that makes the audience feel like they're actually there. If you can make them feel like they're there, like David said on the starting line, such a great example. If they're there on the starting line at NHRA, or they're behind one of the camera guys on the Gymkhana set, and it actually feels like they're there, that's where you're really going to start unlocking success on social media.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's interesting too because you mentioned algorithms, and I know sometimes they favor certain videos over others. Do you guys find it difficult to tell your story and stay on track and stay kind of like true to who you are as a brand versus trying to cater towards algorithms and making sure that you kind of sacrifice a little bit of each just to make sure that, the content lands? Or like what does that look like for you guys?
Um, I, I I go back to the individual piece of content and what the goal is. Not every piece of content we publish is designed to get 5 million views, you know, um, and some of them are, getting, over 60 million views, and those have a different design and a different intention, and they're relating with the audience on something completely different. But if you can get specific and strategic with your content strategy overall and the mix of content that you're producing and publishing and testing, then you start to learn what's working and where the value is in that piece of content, because the value might not just be viral views. And I feel like more often than not, it's not viral views, but there are conversions you can track and different goals you can have, and it's still okay. It doesn't always just have to be views.
And I think the maybe one of the most challenging things is when you feel compelled to feed an audience, to feed an algorithm, and you don't actually have a piece of content worth sharing, but you feel compelled to
Mm.
feed something. And those probably end up being unnecessary piece of content that you could settle your ego, settle your expectations, say we don't have something good, so we're not going to put out something just because. On the flip of this, and this is maybe probably interesting, there are times, if you could imagine, we have pieces of content that have to be put out that we're not really looking for a big audience to get. Maybe you have to weigh in on something, or maybe maybe there is something within the institution that needs to be expressed. Um, but it isn't to getting an audience, it's to have a perspective, or there might be a piece of content that we want the audience to take one way, and then it becomes assessed in the comments a different direction, and they don't like it. And I think that's always an interesting idea of the algorithm, the audience. It's really creator audience relationship, and you have a platform that's attempting to do the best to connect the two, and sometimes it's going to fail. The idea of feeding the algorithm, hoping that the audience comes along. Again, I understand why we play that game. We sometimes try to play the opposite, try to a press release put out this afternoon on Friday afternoon is no one on this call would ever think that was a good time to put things out because no one will see it. People are already on a momentum. It's done for the day. We classically were always trained. The news cycle began on Sunday mornings. Um, where I came from a car magazine background, our web traffic was high Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, probably when people were supposed to be doing their jobs or studying school. Where I work now, when we race on the weekends, our traffic is highest Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we have different realities that because of our relationship with the audience, we try to feed that relationship. And and again, we're going to have content put out on our schedule and probably at our best when we do that, and at our worst when we're trying to satisfy something that we don't actually believe in, but feel compelled to play with.
Awesome. That's interesting. All right, so we are approaching we're getting really close to the end here. So I do want to take some questions from our viewers. There's quite a few that have popped in. So we'll try and squeeze in what we can before we wrap up here. So we have one here that says, after you publish your content, what KPIs are most important to draw audience insights and gauge performance? For ads, it could be sales, but for organic content on social media, is it shares, watch time, and views on YouTube? What do those KPIs direct your future content, or how do they direct your future content? Sorry.
Yeah, I can speak on that a little bit. I think the strongest KPI is one that isn't necessarily trackable through the back end and metrics, but it's sentiment. And it takes a human to pay attention to what the sentiment is and how your audience is receiving your content. Views, shouldn't necessarily be the goal, but they can be an indicator or a signal. But the engagement could also be a bad thing, go to the comments and it's, 100,000 bad comments isn't a good thing either. I mean, I guess it depends, but any publicity can be good publicity, I guess. I don't, but you need to understand sentiment and how it's being received.
And I think for us, the metrics of success are really about the behaviors that we're trying to get audience to engage with. And in many cases, like Jordan's saying, social media platforms don't give us that metric back. And
Yep.
the behaviors that we're looking for, there are times where a share felt very good, where the audience felt like whatever we made content wise was so authentic, so true, uh, so much so that they wanted to essentially take credit for or participate with it by sharing it with people that they cared about. Um, and I think that the share has been a valuable aspect. That's probably diluted now. The comments, I come from a period where I was told, don't ever read the comments. Now, if someone's willing to probably, some of the stuff that we see that is the best is when there is dialogue between audience
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
productive, and I think that that's difficult to achieve, and I don't, but again, we probably like that the most, where some ideas come, and if you can then participate with that discussion or surface that comment, surface that contribution early on, car magazine world, or letters written in by audience, feedback. A lot of times we would make a mistake and the audience would see that, catch us, and then essentially provide us with a, hey, you got that wrong. And I think that's why those early comment sections, getting letters to the editor of a magazine, were helpful, because you saw the audience participating, get in a constructive manner where other audience members, it's worth reading the comments and getting feedback. I think that can be very good. It's almost like a community that evolves. But I know that there are a lot of comments that aren't worth reading, but I think that's probably the one that we look at shares, and then again, behavioral metrics of, is the audience growing? Are we on the right track? Are we telling the right kind of story? Are we improving at what we do? Are we evolving what we do? Again, early on, everything social media was shot on iPhone, and now production value and turnaround times have both improved, and we're going to value that. Again, many people here listening, if you started early, your numbers are already big, and the algorithms were so beneficial early on that getting a million views on something, it was the platforms. That's all they could want, is to put in front of a number of people. The number of comments, the number of people were shown to. Now a lot of those metrics are things that you're chasing. And I always come back to, if you're chasing any one metric, it's you should, whatever you want when you get that number of likes, comments, or views or shares, do that now. Don't wait. And again, chase that behavior that you want to have, even if it's just connecting the audience, answering questions, showing them something beautiful, showing them something important, and going forward, so you can keep improving it yourself.
Very cool. We do have a specific question here for you, David, from the viewers. What's your advice and what is the value of print paired with video? Like the NHRA and the National Dragster, with National Dragster at the NHRA TV or other video advertising?
Sure. I think that because we have the two intrinsically drawn out, and Jordan, you said it earlier on, moments. There was a time where there was a battle between the still photographer and the video editor, who they were both trying to find these moments. And if there was 10 frames or 20 frames per second a camera could shoot, or the idea of how small of a video clip would resonate with the audience. So we're looking for those moments. Again, I'm a talker, so we can talk all day long, right? If I can show you something in the video, we had this pivotal moment that I saw 10 years ago where a Ford Mustang versus a Camaro, and we would write about this race. And then I realized, oh, rather than write about it, I should just show you the race, because inherently the race is 8 seconds, and I can show it to you in 8 seconds, as opposed to you can't read what I'm going to write about it in 8 seconds. So I think there's some great advantage to video on top of story. If I want to pull you in behind the scenes and take an 8 hour, an 8 day, an 8 year experience, I can distill that down into a 60-second read. So I think it's about playing with time. Again, it's almost like slow motion or curation. So print is still very valuable if you're trying to curate a huge experience into a digestible, understandable piece of wisdom. And video is very effective if you're just, show me what happened, show me that reaction and let me see it for myself. A sidebar experience, great example of an opportunity. Leah Pritchett, Pruitt, involved in Top Fuel car wreck in St. Louis, 2020. Top Fuel dragster launched, went down half track, it bowed in the middle, broke in half, and she went up in the air. Parachute deployed, and she came down and landed, I think, right rear tire, and slid to a stop. And she's driving a canopy car. So before the car comes to a stop, by some miracle, you're seeing her open the canopy and she gets out. And she essentially tells the audience she's okay by doing so before a safety crew even is there. And it was really bad. You can look it up online. It doesn't look like she's going to get out of the car when it's happening. But the part that's not known, and we don't have any video of it, is that that particular race, she raced two cars. She was going to get into a Dodge Challenge, or something called a drag pack. Something that runs 7.5 seconds instead of 3.5 seconds. And in order for her to drive that slower car, she actually has to change fire suits. So there at the starting line, while they're cleaning it up, she shows back up wearing a different fire suit. Now, whatever damage she had that she went through physically, she took one fire suit off, put another one on, got in her car, and was back ready to go. They ended up deciding that category, decided not to run that day. But there's no video footage of that. There's no photos. But in a print story, I can tell you, how was she? How did she, what kind of racer is she? What kind of person is she? Well, I can just tell you, she was back at the starting line and changed suits and was ready to go again. And I could tell you that in her print story, and I can get her to comment on it. And even though she'd probably be hate being singled out for knowing that, yeah, yeah, she was ready to go.
Mhm.
And she, it was it was an emotional experience for her, and I can tell you that in words, and I could take you back there. Now it's almost 6 years ago.
Oh, that's pretty interesting there. I have another one here from the viewers for both of you. So, how do you decide when you need to change the purpose in your posts, and what are you changing within your content to drive the intent, your specific goals and values?
Hmm.
I'm gonna steal you, Jordan, here while you think about that. Because
Go
we're
for
lucky.
it.
We have a calendar. Time is an enemy and it's also a friend. Where NHRA's 75th season began 2 weeks ago in Gainesville, Florida. So we naturally have something that is going to change our frame of reference. Today we're in Phoenix, Arizona. In 2 weeks we'll be in Pomona, California. So we have these naturally pivoting events that, let's say we screw something up, we miss an opportunity, we totally underperform, and we could dwell on that. We could have meetings about it. We could talk. We could criticize. We could get very self-reflective and find some positives, and we could get very self-reflective and find some negatives. Um, but the one thing that we have that really is a nice driving force is we have another race coming. So we have to necessarily compartmentalize that and probably are able to use events and calendar dates as great pivots. Even if you fail, fail quickly, fail privately, fail in a short term, and then give yourself a date. Let's say you can't do a great shoot this weekend, but you have to. Um, Work far enough out that you can say, all right, then on this date, here's where we're going to get it right. Here's where we have enough time. Here's where we have the right venue, the right photographer, the right editor to put this together for the right client. So I would use time as an enemy. And again, everybody on this call doesn't have enough time to do what they want. So I would flip it and use that to your advantage and say, all right, here's the thing that the event, the moment in time that we're all going to come together around to force that pivot.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting question that could be very different for many different brands or different outlets, depending on what your goals are. The way that I like to structure our content strategy is typically on a project or campaign basis. So for something like, let's just pick Gymkhana, just because it's my favorite project and everyone else seems to like it on the internet too. Um, but for something with Gymkhana, it's going to have a lot of different goals. Some of it's going to be around launching a new collab product line with Travis Pastrana. Some of it's going to be around a moment where one of our partners, Mercury Racing's boats in it, and we want to showcase that. There's a huge range of goals and values and intentions within that campaign. And if you can break it down on a project and campaign level and understand what all your goals are, you can set up a campaign where you move through those things seamlessly with your audience and you take them on that journey, and it feels cohesive and it feels natural, it feels organic, and it feels like something they want to be a part of. What I try to avoid is a stark shift between, okay, fire up a bunch of product or e-commerce marketing content, or just shifting. There isn't usually a shift per se or a change, but our business goals that align with our audience are baked into everything.
Awesome. Well, I think we are pretty much out of time here, so we won't be able to get to any more of the viewer questions here, but really want to thank you guys for sharing your insights. It's really interesting to see kind of how you guys operate on different spectrums of the video world. So thank you guys so much for sharing. I'm sure the viewers got a lot of helpful gems out of all that. I do want to go over something here really quick. For anybody on here, you should be receiving a email with this entire recording if you want to go back and listen to it and just in case you didn't take notes. There's a lot of super helpful stuff in there. I'm probably going to go back in there and check it out again. But we also have another lunch and learn coming up in June, and this one is going to be um, it's going to be about experimental events. So if you're interested in that, be sure to keep an eye on the newsletter. You should see emails pop up with that as well. So we'd love to have you. Want to thank the audience also for just chiming in here, and hopefully everybody got something out of this. Thank you guys again for being part of it. This was a really good talk with you guys.
Yeah, Jordan, David,
Yeah.
thank you guys very much. Really appreciate you making the time for this.
Our pleasure.
No, thanks for having us on. I really enjoyed chatting with all you guys.
Jordan, I look forward to our first project together. So thanks again.
Yeah, let's get something fired up. I think we can make some cool stuff happen.
And to everyone who joined us at home or at the office, thanks for making the time. And I don't know about you guys, but I was taking notes. There were some pretty amazing gems in there. So thank you again.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Have a good weekend.